DreAllDay.com.
Now tuned into the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves any one of us, including yourself, to go and make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into a series of frameworks, approaches, insights, strategies, and techniques all underneath the umbrella of one unifying philosophy that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic is, you must know people in every one of the areas that I am listing here. Yesterday we started on part one. I don't have to give you too much background on this because the title is self-explanatory. Sometimes I use metaphorical titles. This one is not metaphorical. I mean this one literally. Let's pick up right where we left off, which is on point number 4. You must know people in every industry that I am mentioning in this series. Number 4, medicine/health. Now, you may be wondering, well, Dre, you just said medical in the first point of yesterday's episode. Here, I'm talking about somebody who actually understands on a detailed level pharmaceuticals, prescriptions, any type of drugs or interventions that you may want or think that you need. For example, in the process of childbirth, there are lots of things that the medical industry, such as doctors and nurses, will tell you that many of us have been indoctrinated to believe. But if you go talk to someone who is more on the anti-system route, for lack of a better term, such as, let's say, a midwife or a doula, they may have a different way of looking at things. In other words, you may not need to get a C-section. I saw someone post on social media the other day, my wife is about to have a kid and all the kids she's had so far have all been C-sections. She's about to get another C-section. There are some people who don't think that American women need to be getting C-sections nearly as much as they have been getting them. There is data that shows that the number of women getting C-sections has continually risen over the past several decades. Why is this? Well, it depends on who you ask. One reason that some may posit is because the medical industry is able to get you in the bed and out of the bed faster when they can determine what time that baby is going to be born. In other words, finding a way to induce the birth by giving you a C-section rather than letting it naturally happen the way labor is supposed to happen. And in the hospital, they don't want you sitting in the bed for a long time because the longer you sit in the bed, they can only charge you one time for the one time you're in the bed. But if they get you in and out and then to bring next woman in and out, now they can make more money by getting more people in and out of the bed. And there's also the drugs that come with the C-section, and also because the C-section itself is major surgery being performed in a woman's body. And guess what? Surgery ain't free. Or your insurance or you got to pay for that surgery. So all of these things could be incentives. I talked about this in yesterday's episode. Incentives that cause the medical industry or leads to the medical industry and the people in it to have you do things that you really don't need to do. Giving you drugs that you really don't need to take. Getting you on prescriptions that you really don't need to be on. Giving you interventions that you really don't need to have done to you. I've given you this story. I've given you a couple of these stories. First of all, I gave you the story of my son's birth. We did a home birth, a planned home birth with a midwife and a doula in our home. We ended up taking our son to the hospital the same night because we just wanted to make sure he had not ingested any poop, also known as meconium, that he released while he was still inside of mommy's womb. And while at the hospital, the doctor, the physician in charge of the NICU, neonatal intensive care unit, came to me and told me, there's some things that I need to do to your son. And she started listing them, just saying them to me. And I told her, you're not doing all that stuff to my son. Why you need to do all that? We only came here to check for one thing. Why you need to do all these extra things? And they were basically telling me, the nurses and the doctor, this is just our normal procedure. And I said, well, fuck your normal procedure. There's a reason why I had a home birth, because I don't want to go through your normal procedure. I'm not doing all this. And I got my midwife on the phone and she said, get them to write down every single thing they want to do. And we got the doctor to write everything down. It was like 11 things she wanted to do, literally 11 different things she wanted to do to my child who was just born that day. And I read them all to the midwife, and the midwife said, only let her do number like 6 and number 10. Like only let her do 2 of these things. And she warned me, the midwife warned me, she said, Dre, if she does some of these other things on there, the law says that the baby has to stay in the hospital in the neonatal intensive care unit for 10 days to be monitored after they do this thing. So make sure they only do the things that I'm telling you. And she told me, she didn't say it that way, but I got the message and I told them, y'all can only do these things. You can't do anything else. Ended up getting my child out of the hospital within 24 hours. Even that was like tooth and nail fight and having to cuss people out and having security called on me in the middle of Jackson Hospital in Miami, Florida, because they want to go through their thing. Here's the point. Had I not known what I knew based on the information I got from this person who knows the medical space but is not part of the system, I would have been subjected to whatever they wanted to do, and my child would have been in the hospital for 10 fucking days for some shit that they didn't even need. And my son is very healthy and very alive and very active and didn't get any of that intervention bullshit that the medical industry pushes on people, especially when you're in a vulnerable state, i.e. The child when they are born, or a mother when she is giving birth, which is another reason why, not for nothing, this is the reason why it's very important that a man, the father of a child, be in the hospital, or if you even end up in the hospital, but be there when a woman is giving birth, because when the woman is in that vulnerable state, she's not in a position mentally to fend for herself, and the baby can't fend for itself, it can't even fucking talk, and you ain't around. Well, guess what? The medical system gonna do whatever the hell they want to do to you. This is one of the issues I have with the medical industry, if you can't tell. And another example is also speaking on the medical industry. But the point of me telling you that story about my son's birth was because I had the midwife as a resource. She knew stuff, but she's not part of the system. So she wasn't telling me to do what the system says. She was saying, you don't have to do these things. But again, if I didn't know that, they probably would have had me thinking that I have to go through with this, and I might not even be in a position to question them in the first place. You understand? So that's why you need to know somebody who is outside of that world, but still knows the world. And you need to know someone on the inside too, because they'll tell you, hey, this is what we got to do. Now, another time, medical industry, I had a knee issue probably like early 2021. And I go and find this best doctor in the city of Miami, allegedly. This guy's like I forget what he's a knee doctor, for lack of a better term. And he does the examinations on Miami Heat players before they get drafted and when they come to the team. So he's supposed to be the best of the best when it comes to the knees of an athlete. So I am going to see this guy, but first I had to go get an MRI. Then I had to go get an X-ray. So there's $1,000 on the table right there. And if you know anything about the medical industry, that's $1,000 between just those two things. Then I finally go get to see the doctor. This costs $400 just to go see this guy and talk to him. That's all, just to talk to him, $400. And I had to talk to 2 other nurses before doing that. I had a conversation with this guy for literally 6 minutes. And what he tells me he wants to do after all the examinations and looking at all the stuff and all the shit, he says, well, what we're going to do is we're going to give you a shot. I can't remember if he said cortisol or cortisone. Some of you who know the medical industry and the medicine industry know which one it was. Either cortisol or cortisone. They're 2 different things. And one of them you're going to get, and it's going to destabilize your knee for about 6 weeks. He didn't say exact. I said, what do you mean by destabilize? He said, that means you're going to be in a cast. And my whole leg will be in a cast, and I'll be walking on crutches for 6 weeks. This is what he's saying. After that 6 weeks, the swelling will have gone down because my knee has started to swell up a little bit. The swelling will go down. Your knee will feel fine. Then you're going to go see my guy, the physical therapist, for another 6 weeks. And then you'll be ready to go and be active again. This whole process is going to take 12 weeks. And again, he didn't even tell me what this is going to cost. I'm already $1,500 in the hole from having paid for the MRI, the X-ray, and going to see this guy. $1,500 already spent, and I didn't even get anything done yet. Now, before I went and did this, and I'm thinking, again, he didn't say, hey, you can go get a second opinion from somebody else. He's the guy. He's the best doctor in Miami, allegedly. So here's what I did. I reached out to my trainer, Maria, who I know from my days as an athlete. She was my trainer for my off-the-court training stuff. Some of you who watched me back in the day may remember her from a bunch of my YouTube videos. And I reached out to her. She doesn't live in Miami anymore. Had she lived in Miami, I would have reached out to her first, but she wasn't in Miami. So I reached out to her and spoke to her and told her the situation. And she started telling me how she had gotten in a situation with the medical industry when they have her doing a bunch of interventions and shit that she didn't need because she had an issue like with her back in the day. And they had her doing all this stuff, and it took all this time, and it cost her all this money, and it didn't even help solve her problem. So she commiserated with me that the medical industry will run you through the ringer because they are incentivized to do so, and they're trained to do so because this is what they learned in medical school. And she said, you don't need to do any of that, Dre. What you need to do is remember our friend Brian. Brian is a mutual friend of ours. I had forgotten about Brian. He lives in Miami, but I had forgotten about him when I had this issue. She said, remember Brian? And I said, yes, I remember Brian. I said, damn, I'm glad you mentioned his name, Maria, because I forgot all about him. He's in Miami. I should have called him as well. She said, yeah, reach out to Brian. He can probably help you. I sent Brian a text message and basically told him in a couple paragraphs what the issue was. I told him what the doctor said. He said, come to my house and see me. I can probably help you. I go to his house. And mind you, this is like during COVID time. So I go to his house. I spend an hour at Brian's house. He gave me like 6 exercises to do for my knees. I recorded the whole thing. He said, do these exercises twice a day for the next, and I said, how long is it going to take for me to do this before I can run again? He said, about 3 weeks. I did the exercise for 3 weeks. That was in 2021, ladies and gentlemen. I've not had a single knee problem since, and I haven't needed to take any time off of running since. This is in 2021. How much did I pay Brian for all this information? $100. after spending $1,500, and we could just say $2,000 between the driving, gas, and everything. We could just say $2,000 on the medical system's information. $100 with someone who knows their shit but is not part of the system got the problem solved much more easily. Now, let me offer the caveat that just because this is what happened with me does not necessarily mean that's what would happen with you in your situation. The point is, you need to know people both inside and outside so that you can get multiple opinions from different angles and choose the option that makes the most sense for you. The problem for some of you is if you don't know anyone, you may end up doing whatever you're told by whoever you go to first. And it might not even be what the hell you need. That's the issue. That's why you need to know people in different places. Everybody follow what I'm saying here? So I would strongly suggest always get more than one opinion from people, especially when it comes to your body and when it comes to your health. It's also a thing when it comes to your freedom when it comes to the legal space. That's why you want to know people on the inside. You want to know people on the outside. It gives you a better idea of what's happening. I've had many conversations with lawyers in my life, and lawyers often know judges pretty well. They got a pretty good read on different judges and how judges are. They don't always have a good read on the state's attorneys who are representing the opposition, but they usually have a pretty good read on judges. I've worked with them before, I've talked to them before, or they know who the other lawyer is. I can call them, we got a relationship, we can work this out without it going to trial, et cetera, et cetera. So this is why you want to know people on multiple sides of a situation, because you never know where you're going to end up. Everything in life is a legal situation, and everything you do with your body is a physical situation, which could become a medical situation, or let's just call it a health situation. That actually is more accurately stated, a health situation, because having a baby, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is not a medical situation. When did it become a thing? Why is it a thing that you had to have a baby in the hospital? Why you gotta go to the hospital for a baby? Don't you go to the hospital when you're sick or injured or something's wrong? Having a baby is not something wrong. It's a natural state. That's a natural thing that women do when we procreate, or when humans procreate, women have babies. Why do you got to go to the hospital? Why did they turn this into a medical situation? Because there's money to be made from it. And I told you, when people are incentivized to do things, they tend to do it more often. Not in a nefarious way, but if you incentivize something, people are going to do it. This is how it works. This is just human nature. This is why you got to protect yourself by having contacts in different spaces. Everybody follow where I'm going with this. So when it comes to anything you are doing with or putting in your body, I strongly suggest you always get more than one opinion from people who have completely different approaches for the same problem. Point number 5. Today's topic, once again, is you must know people in all of these spaces. Number 5 is the fitness space. So fitness and health, are the health medical spaces. People I'm talking about are people who may need to help you if you have an issue. The fitness space is just how do you get your body in shape? And sometimes people can be in both categories. So the two people I mentioned, my former trainer and friend Maria and my friend Brian, both of them are both kind of in the health space because they can help solve problems, but they're also fitness people. They help people get in shape. They help people work out. They help people train. I told you, Maria trained me when I was playing professional sports. So speaking of health, you need to know people in the fitness space, whether you know someone who's an athlete, whether you know a physical therapist, whether you know a personal trainer. These people understand the body. They understand how to get and how to stay in shape. And they can help you with things such as injuries in ways that your doctor could not and would not, and your doctor would never recommend because your doctor doesn't know the shit. Often your doctor is not even an athlete, but they're trying to help you with the problem. Doesn't mean they can't help you necessarily. I had a knee issue. I already told you about this. In 2021, I told you the whole situation. He was saying we're going to give you some kind of shot, some kind of foreign agent in your body. For those of you who do not know me well, I am not a fan of putting foreign agents in my body. I'm not a fan of taking shots. I'm not a fan of taking needles. And I'm not afraid of needles. I'm not a fan of taking needles. I'm not a fan of vaccines. I'm not a fan of any form of drugs. I'm not a fan of taking any type of intervention in my body that can be avoided if I can do it in a more natural way. So when his doctor told me we're going to give you this shot, then we're going to destabilize your knee for 6 weeks, I'm like, now if he told me we'll give you the shot and your knee will be ready to go tomorrow, I might have had a little bit of pause, but the fact that he said 6 weeks of destabilization, I said, I don't have 6 weeks. I want to take 6 weeks to be walking around on crutches. What are you talking about, dude? Are you crazy? So that's one thing that got me thinking, like, this can't be the best way. So I reached out to Maria as a last ditch resort. We ended up with Brian, and again, $100 in an hour, I solved the problem. This is why you got to know people, folks. This is why it's good to know doctors, and it's why it's good to know people in the fitness space. If you get all your information from one space, you're going to pretty much do whatever that space trains people to tell you. And the medical industry, I took time on the medical industry because they're notorious for this. Some of you listening to this, I'm sure there's some people listening to this who work in the medical industry. All right, don't get mad at me. All right, you chose to work in that industry, and this is how the industry works. You know this is how it works, so you shouldn't be mad at me. As a matter of fact, you should be thanking me for pointing it out. Point number 6, today's topic, once again, is you need to know people in all of these spaces. Number 6, the education space. This is especially important if you have children. If you're a parent with children. Now, those of you who are adults and you're already out of school and you're done with school and you don't plan on going back and you don't have kids, and or if you have kids but your kids are already out of school and you're done with that, then this point may not apply to you that much. But if you care about the future of society, then this point can still apply to you even if your kids are 30 years old and you're done having them. This is especially important though if you're a parent and you have minor children who are still in some form of schooling. You need to decide at some point what school you're going to send them to, if any, what teachers they're going to have, and if those teachers are any good or not, getting them prepared to perform well in school, which if they're going to go, they probably might as well do well, and maybe getting them into a certain university. This matters a lot to certain parents. If your child is having issues at school, such as poor grades, problems with teachers, problems with other students, question, who do you go to for advice on how to deal with that? Who do you go to for insight on that situation? If you don't know anybody, the answer is nobody. You don't go to anybody because you don't know anybody. If your only resource is to go to the school, well, guess what the school is going to tell you? They're going to give you the school's version of whatever they think your child needs, which might not be what your child actually needs. Any of you been in a situation where your child was labeled as a problem child for some reason in class, or they were labeled as disabled, unable to learn for some reason because they weren't doing as well or picking up on lessons as easily as some of the other students in class, and you had a real problem with that, but since you had no other resources, the school was just telling you what it told you, and you didn't really have a plan B of anyone else to go to for the problem, and it ended up making you very frustrated, sad, or disappointed because the school is telling you something about your kid. You believe something different, but you don't have anyone who knows what's going on the inside who can reflect back to you what you're saying and give you some possible other options. When I was doing a live stream talking about this and I asked this question to a live audience, I got a lot of responses from parents telling me that that is exactly what's happened to their kid. That they're being told by the school that their kid is doing something wrong or has something wrong with them, and they didn't agree. But if you don't have an option, a resource of anyone to go to help you, what the hell are you going to do? It's a good question. Who are you going to do? Who are you going to go to, and what are you going to do? If your only resource is the school can only tell you what they've been taught by the system because they work there. They don't have a choice. This is why you need to know people who know the educational world, and assuming you have a relationship with them, they can tell you a truth that the system wouldn't tell you. That's why you got to know people outside of the spaces in which you may be dealing with situations, folks. This applies in education, it applies in medicine, it applies in health, and it applies in a bunch of other areas that I haven't even gotten to yet. It applies in the legal system, as I just said, and it applies in some areas that we're going to cover in tomorrow's episode. But let's recap today's episode, which is you must know people in all of these spaces, and I'm telling you why. Number 4, the medicine and the health space. I already gave you a couple stories on this one. Rewind the episode, listen to them again. Point number 5, fitness space. Speaking of your health, you should know people who know something about the physical body, keeping it in shape, getting it in shape, recovering from injuries, how to solve problems in your body rather than going through the medical system, because the system is designed to put you through system stuff. But there are other ways to do things besides through system stuff. So again, any of you who is pregnant or you have a pregnant woman in your life right now, do you need to do it the medical way? And I understand why many people do, because they put a lot of fear around not doing it the medical way. But again, just think about it on a human logical level. Since when did having a baby become a medical situation? It's not a medical situation. Why are you going to the hospital for it? Why are you dealing with a doctor? Doctors solve medical problems. You don't have a medical problem. You're pregnant. You're supposed to get pregnant. That's natural. So maybe there's a way that you can do that naturally that goes outside of the system. But I understand if you're 30 years old and you've been indoctrinated your entire life, that's the way you're supposed to, quote unquote, do it, or you're endangering yourself if you don't do it. And again, I had a doctor say this directly to my face after my child was born. I fear for your son's life if I don't get to do all these interventions. She literally said that to my face. And we never did any of the interventions. Here we are 2.5 years later, and there's my son alive, breathing, and well, and very loud. He's napping right now, so y'all don't even hear him through 2 closed doors. The point is, you need to know people outside of that world. Number 6, educational space. Especially important if you're a parent and or you have minor children. Why? Because those kids are going to go through some form of schooling, and you want to know what the best options are available to you and not only be subject to what the educational system is telling you, because just like the medical system in America, the educational system in the United States of America is garbage and it's fucked. And if you don't have any option but to do what they tell you, then you may end up screwing your kid over and you're not even trying to. That's why you need to know people. All that said, tomorrow I got more that I got to give you. Between now and then, go to workonyourgameuniversity.com so you can put yourself in a position to be fully equipped, fully resourced, to know people who know stuff, to be a person who knows stuff that other people want to know themselves. Go to workonyourgameuniversity.com, work with me, and let's get to it. Work on your game. Dre all